It's time for another Out and About with Jamie Grout podcast, and I've wanted to do a podcast with this guy for quite a while, but we finally got it done, and I'm excited about it. It's a phone interview with a guy who is one of my media heroes, and part of the reason is because he has become a media icon in the Dallas area, and the other reason is, heck, he gave me my start in radio. 50 years ago at KNIA Radio in Knoxville, Iowa. He started out in Newton, and his name is Dale Hansen. Back in 1972, John Carl, the former owner of KCOB, hired him as a DJ. He transitioned into becoming a newsman, and he really found his niche in news and sports. He left Newton and climbed the ladder of success, as they say. And one of his stops along the way was a radio station in Knoxville, and he thought of me, and he hired me to be a DJ when I was 17 years old, and it started me in the broadcast business. And we'll get into all that in just a couple of moments, but I had a really exciting phone interview with him about his days in Newton. He talks about Newton's mayor, Mert Levine. She was the first woman mayor in Newton, and how she motivated him to have a big party in Texas, in a suburb of Dallas, for many years. He talks about how a local politician wanted him to read off a list of questions that the politician had provided for him, and how he refused to read those questions, and the story behind that. He talks about the Newton Nighthawks also, some of his memories of Newton, and you'll find out a lot about Dale Hansen. If you've ever lived in the Dallas area, you will know of Dale Hansen. And if you've watched anything of the Netflix documentary on America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, you'll know about Dale, because he made Jerry Jones real angry once with a question that he asked him. And it was about, would anybody ever hire Jerry Jones to be a general manager in any other professional sports teams? Jerry Jones couldn't answer that question. You can also find editorials from Dale Hansen on YouTube. Now, you may not agree with his opinion because he's considered a liberal. He's a blue man in a red state, but he will always make you think. So check out Dale Hansen online. He's retired from sports anchoring from WFAA TV in Dallas, but he left his mark down there, and I think you'll enjoy hearing about his early days in Newton and talking about some of his antics down in Dallas. We'll get to those in just a couple moments, but first, let's talk about our sponsors, one of which is Ryan's Tire and Auto on First Avenue, Newton. Certainly, we want to send out condolences to Ryan and his family on the loss of his father, Andy Dannon. I met Andy a few times when I went into Ryan's, and Andy was a great storyteller, a fantastic guy to talk to, and he would hear WHO in the morning when he was raising his cattle, and I can remember on Andy's birthday, I had our farm guy, Dwayne Murley, give a shout out to Andy once, and he was all excited that we had done that, and he was just a fantastic guy. And if you knew Andy, he was just a wonderful person to have on hand there, and I know he was very proud of Ryan and the service that he provided, not only to his customers, to the community too, and I know Ryan's going to carry on well for his dad. So send out thoughts and prayers to Ryan and his family on the loss of his father, Andy. I just want to read a testimonial from Ryan's Facebook page from Mr. B. He said he ordered wheels and tires for his van, and they look good, and his van drives better than it has in the last 35 years. And he also got new tires for his 2022 Jeep from Ryan's. It was $200 cheaper than the dealership in Des Moines, and $250 cheaper than his old tire shop in Down, and definitely he's coming back to Ryan's at a future date. Also, Newton Clinic, stay healthy this season. Newton Clinic is offering flu and COVID shots on a walk-in basis, Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 5:45 p.m., and Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Protect yourself, your family, and your community at Newton Clinic. Podcast also sponsored by Advantage Credit Union.
Are you feeling financially drained? Tired of high interest rates and endless debt? Fear not, your financial superhero has arrived. Advantage Credit Union is here to rescue you from financial distress. With our powerful loan refinancing options, you could lower your monthly payments, shorten your loan term, and free up cash for a brighter future. Unleash your financial superpower today. Call us at 641-792-5660 or apply online at acuiowa.org.
Subject to credit approval, terms and conditions may apply. See credit union for details. Federally insured by NCUA.
It's time for another Out and About with Jamie Grout podcast, and this time around I'm talking to a guy who's, I guess I'd almost call him like a big brother to me, but also a hero. He's a media icon in the Dallas area, but he started out in good old Newton, Iowa at KCOB years and years ago, and his name is Dale Hansen. How you doing today, Dale?
Jamie, I'm doing great, and at my age, I really appreciate you referring to me as a big brother instead of your grandfather, so I appreciate that a great deal.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to try to capsulize this interview as much as possible, because I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, you came back to Newton for a Newton Nighthawks reunion, and you, me, and my lady Lynette got together at a sports bar and talked for 4 hours. Well, we don't have 4 hours here today, maybe a half hour, but I'm going to just try to capsulize how you and I met real quick, and that was my mom was working for my dad at the real estate insurance office, and my dad was a client of John Carl's at the radio station, KCOB, and he brought you by, and come to find out, my mom was from Missouri Valley, you're from Logan, you both were a couple Harrison County kids, and I was always a nut for being in radio. I always knew I wanted to be in radio. When I was a kid, I'd play radio in the bedroom of my house. I had my own record player and microphone, and I'd invite my friends over. They thought I was weird because I wanted to play radio, but they went along with me. And so my mom told you how enamored I was with radio. And come to find out, my aunt was on your parents' bowling team. In fact, my aunt flew with your mom and dad in his airplane once to a bowling tournament. And anyway, you were very kind to me. You told my mom, hey, have your son give me a call at the radio station sometime. Well, that was a mistake, because I called you about every freaking day at the radio station, Dale. And when you were when you were a DJ, and you never told me to get away. You were very, very kind to me. And in fact, you invited me out a couple of times to the radio station, and you let me start the turntables. You had me pick out songs. You had me help with your automation. And I thought you were just the coolest thing ever, and you invited me to ball games with you, and I remember going to a Linville-Sully basketball game with you, and I think back then you recorded the ball games, because KCOB-FM was on the air at that time, so no, it was on KCOB-FM, I believe, but you were very kind to me, and I just absolutely, in fact, on Facebook, I know you're not on Facebook, but your wife Chris is, and if she wants to look it up, she can, and I listed a number of people who in my 50-year radio career have been great teachers to me, and, John Carl, who you know, was a teacher, but you were the very first teacher that I mentioned in that list of great teachers. And Dale, you were so kind to me. It kind of gets me choked up a little bit. You took me under your wing, and you were just great. And so your career has been just crazy. You left Newton and went to Knoxville, and you remembered this kid who was so crazy about radio, and back then you needed to have somebody to keep radio stations, AM radio stations, on the air to sunset, and in the summertime the FCC would let radio stations stay on the air till sunset, and you thought about me, and you recommended me, and that's how I got started in radio. And this summer it was 50 years in radio. You left Knoxville, went to St. Cloud, Minnesota. From there you went to Coyle in Omaha. You started weekend sports on the NBC affiliate in Omaha. You became full-time sports there. You ended up going to Dallas to the CBS affiliate. Then you went to the ABC affiliate there. And how long were you at WFAA TV, Dale?
I was there 38 years. 41 years in Dallas, including my time at the CBS affiliate. And then they fired me like almost everybody else did along that route that you were talking about. And in March of '83, I went to WFAA. 38 years later, I retired in September of 2021. And it was quite a roadmap to end up in Dallas. It really was. And I loved every minute of it. Absolutely every minute of it.
Can I just say, as a 17-year-old kid, you hiring me at KNIA, a 500-watt radio station in Knoxville, Iowa, you had more faith in me as a DJ than you've had as Jerry Jones as a general manager for the Dallas Cowboys.
I'm sitting at a Dairy Queen outside of Waxahachie, Texas right now, and I've got more faith in the person pulling an ice cream cone than I do in Jerry Jones as the general manager of the Dallas Cowboys. But you know, I mean, it's funny. I'm sitting here, you know, it almost chokes me up as well. And I've told you this 1,000 times. You're way too kind to me. You're way too kind. But those Linville Sully games you mentioned about, we did do some of them live. We also did record a lot of them. But I think you inspired me every bit as much, Jamie. I've tried real hard, and I'm still involved doing it, in helping younger people. And I think I did it with you just because, again, the connection with the family obviously was a big part of it. But then I loved your energy and your enthusiasm for the job. And then I actually did see that I was having a bit of an impact. A small one maybe, but I was having a bit of an impact. And I carried that over the rest of my life. I also had people that did it for me along the way, especially when I got into television my first time. I had a man named Danny Livingston who basically became my big brother, who took me under his wing for no apparent reason. And he's the one that taught me basically everything I know about television and sports. And I just think it's an incredibly important thing that everybody should be doing. I don't look at it as an obligation. I don't look at it as an inconvenience. I look at it as an opportunity. That if I can have an impact on a young person's life, which I think I had some on yours, that's worth a great deal more than any paycheck I cashed along the way. It really is.
Well, you certainly had an impact on me, and I've hung in there, you know, for 50 years, and as you know, I was inducted into the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here a couple years ago, and if it could have been done, I would have loved to have had you to come up here to induct me, but they didn't do that. You were inducted into the Texas Broadcasting Hall of Fame. You've won Peabody Awards. You've won so many Emmy Awards, from what I understand. You had to throw some of the Emmy Awards out to make room for other Emmy Awards.
I've got this eagle wall at home. My wife calls it my eagle wall. A buddy of mine refers to it as the "oh my God, somebody loves me" wall. I'm very anal about everything has to match up. And I was putting this wall together. It's got all kinds of stuff. Troy Aikman's rookie helmet, autographed footballs from people I've known over the years, different awards. I've even got my high school catcher's mitt on this wall. It's all in a glass case. And it is true, as embarrassing as it sounds when I hear you say it out loud, but I put 26 Emmy trophies across this shelf. Well, I actually had 5 more. And there was just no place to put them. I either had to create another row, which obviously would look weird, or I had to jam them in, which would also look weird. So I went through the 31, and in all seriousness, the 5 that I tossed, I really didn't have any major role in winning that particular award. I was basically just the host of a show that everybody else did the work. So I tossed it because they had their individual Emmys for the award. It wasn't like I was throwing it away and consequently somebody wasn't being identified. But I'll tell you this, Jamie, I still have this on my wall. In 1974, right after I had left KCOB in Newton, John Carl called me and told me that I had won the Iowa Investigative Reporter of the Year for the Associated Press. And it was a nice plaque, I mean a certificate actually. It was a certificate in a framed glass case. And it still hangs on my wall. And it was the first award of any kind that I had ever won. And I swear to you, I absolutely believe it would be the only award that I would ever win. I was so blown away that I had won that particular award. I have kept it to this day, and it's right above my desk. And whenever I sit down, that's the first thing I see. And when I bring people to my house for a dinner party or whatever the occasion might be, it's the first thing I point out to them. Because that was the impetus that led to this crazy career I ended up having. And I do thank John Carl for that. I called John many years later and thanked him for giving me the chance. But it is funny that this young boy from Logan, Iowa, wins the Iowa Associated Press Investigative Reporter of the Year, thinking it was the only award I'd ever win. And some 50 years later, I'm tossing out 5 Emmys because they just don't look right on my wall.
Funny how things turn out.
It just seemed to be appropriate at the time, but I tell you the truth, it is kind of embarrassing when I hear you say it out loud, I have to admit.
Well, you came here as a DJ, and then John Carl one day said, well, a guy by the name of Dave Reek is leaving. He's going down to Creston, Iowa, and by the way, his family still owns that radio station in Creston, I guess. Yeah, but we want to see if you want to try your hand at doing news. And I've heard you say you didn't like being a DJ. Now, I of course, I thought you were a radio god back then, and I thought you were an awesome DJ, Dale. But you said that you didn't care about being a DJ so much, and you tried being a news guy. And looking back, you were a heck of a great news guy. You had all the city officials in Newton and the state representatives and the senators listening because they never knew what you were going to say, Dale, and
Well, Jamie, here's the funny story about this. You might remember parts of it, but here I grew up like you. Now I was never the kid playing radio in the bedroom late at night, but I listened to the radio differently my whole life. I wanted to be Joe Light. He was a disc jockey on Coil, and I absolutely wanted to be Joe Light. That was my goal. So I bounced around when I got out of the Navy in 1969, and I never thought I could do it because kids from Logan, Iowa never ended up on the radio. So I was bouncing around. I had 4 different jobs, got fired from 3 of them. Bill collector, employment agency counselor, food salesman, just weird jobs. Finally, a high school teacher of mine convinced me to try to get into radio. I go to Career Academy in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I get hired in Newton, Iowa. That was my dream job. I grew up for most of my life dreaming about being a disc jockey. And about 6 weeks in, I actually said, this might be the worst job ever. I was crushed. I was crushed. And this is the thing that's always been amazing to me. I'm not a religious man, but I have had an angel sitting on my shoulder because I run into the most lucky circumstances imaginable. I am so incredibly frustrated spinning records at KCOB because it's just one guy in a booth and I'm smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and I'm playing the same songs every day and I'm just going nuts. Dave Reek, surprisingly, up in Leeds, and John Carl, and this is, I think, the greatness of John Carl to me. John Carl knew that I was unhappy as a disc jockey and said, why don't you try the news? He said, you read well, you sound good, maybe you'd be happier doing news. And it just clicked. Because, as I said, back then, Newton had a little Peyton place in it. There was a lot of stuff going on in Newton, Iowa.
Oh, sure.
And it just clicked. I mean, I just loved it. Then, that also included being, you got to do the Linville-Sully basketball games. Then we started carrying the Southeast Polk girls basketball games when they went to the state tournament. Then I'm sitting next to Jim Zabel broadcasting the state tournament in Des Moines.
Right.
And now my life is going 500 miles an hour. Going 500 miles an hour. I've been to Super Bowls, Jamie. I've been around the world with the Dallas Cowboys. I've been to Tokyo, Japan, London, England, Mexico, Canada. I've partied till dawn with Troy Aikman after winning a Super Bowl. I don't think I've ever had as much fun as I did covering Linville-Sully girls basketball and Southeast Polk girls basketball and breaking stories that we broke on a regular basis at KCOB Newton. One quick story. I'm kind of like you. I don't have many quick stories, but I'll try. I'm the disc jockey at this time. I hadn't started doing the news yet, and I forget his name, but he was a state representative. A state representative would come in, and we would interview him for like 20 minutes or so. Well, he would come in, and he brought his questions with him. He handed me this long sheet of paper with all the questions that he wanted me to ask him about what was going on at the State House in Des Moines. So I looked at these questions, and I didn't know better that first time, so I just did it. I just asked him, and well, that of and by itself was bad enough, but on top of it, he would laugh at me for asking such a stupid question. And this old guy, I wish I could remember his name, but this old guy would look at me when I would ask the question that he had written down, and then he goes, oh, young man, you just don't understand. You just don't understand. Let me set you straight. Big mistake on his part. Big mistake. Because the next week he came in, and I wrote my own questions, and I did my own research, and I read everything I could get my hands on. He comes walking into the station, hands me the list of questions, and I just wadded them up right in front of him. Now, again, I'm just a young kid making about $94 a week spinning records at KCOB. And I looked at him and I said, no, we're fine. I've got my questions for you. And he about swallowed his tongue. And I just chewed him up and spit him out. He then goes to John, complaining that, well, this isn't right. John comes to me, what the heck's going on? And I told John, I said, I'm not gonna sit here and be his puppet. I'm just not gonna do it. And John supported me, and as I like to tell people, the rest is history. But it was just a fabulous time, and I've just never wavered. The John Carl just gave me so many great opportunities, and laid the foundation for what was to come years later.
Well, I wanted to mention a memory of Newton that you had brought up to me that I had heard. Well, you didn't bring it up to me. It was on a podcast that you did at a radio station in Waxahachie, and you had mentioned me, but you also talked about a party that you had for several years there where you live, which I believe is in Waxahachie, and it was based on a party that our first female mayor in Newton, Mert Levine, had. Tell us about that, Dale.
Well, when I was working at KCOB, now I'm doing news, and Mert Levine decides to run for mayor. And they basically had a system, I forget what they called it, but it was basically like the men's council. And the city leaders would get together and have breakfast, and they would decide. Basically, they would decide, this clique of 10, 20 men, whatever, as to who would be the mayor. Well, for whatever reason, Mert Levine decides to challenge them. And I just, for whatever reason as well, I just hit it off with her. I just found her to be fascinating. I absolutely, in my heart, believe I did nothing wrong. All I did was interview her and interview her opponent. And once again, forgive me, but I don't remember the guy's name. But I do remember the quote that he gave me. I'm live on KCOB Newton, and I said to him, what do you think about running against Mert Levine, who at that time, it was very unusual that a woman would be running to be mayor of a city the size of Newton, Iowa. And the man actually said to me, I think the little lady needs to get back in the kitchen where all the little ladies belong. And I just looked at him and I went, thanks for coming in, and I appreciate it. And he got beat. Mert Levine beat him, and rightfully so. She then calls me and says, I need you to come, we're having a party. Well, where I come from, and I think you understand this concept, Mert, what do I need to bring? And she said, well, no, you don't bring anything. I thought, what kind of a stupid party is this going to be? Because if I'm not bringing the chips and the dipper, I'm not bringing the beers or whatever. I said, this could be the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Well, I get to her house. She was married to a lawyer. She was a lawyer. As I remember, she was a lawyer. Her husband's a lawyer. We get to the house. They have people waiting on you when you get there. There's a big buffet laid out, and they had any drink that you wanted. And I looked at Mert, and I mean, I had never seen anything like that. Every party I had ever been to in my life meant that everybody chipped in, and we all brought something. And I said to Mert Levine, someday, not on that $94 a week that John was paying me, of course, but I said, someday, I'm going to throw a party. Everybody comes to my house, and I provide everything. You fast forward to 1983. We had 14 people show up at my house. We had beer, wine, chips, boom. 1984, we had chicken and hot dogs and hamburgers and beer and wine and chips. 1985, we had 42 people show up. 1985, I hired a band. We had 300 people show up. 25 years later, we did it for 25 consecutive years. And the last year, we had 1,250 people, and we had 4 bands in the backyard, because I realized that once the band went on break, people started to leave. So I got 4 bands, so that every time one of them went on break, boom, the music started immediately. We had pizzas cooked at 11 o'clock on a big old stove that the pizza store brought in. We had dinner, we had drinks, we had air-conditioned bathrooms.
Wow.
And it became the event. There would be a line of limousines, because Waxahachie, for those who don't know, is about 40 miles south of downtown Dallas. So people didn't want to drive 40 miles to my house, drink all night, and drive back. So there would be a string of limousines as far as you could see.
Wow.
And then they would park the limousines in the pasture, and then we had air-conditioned buses that would bring them down to the house. And I lived on a little, I called it my mini ranch in Texas. I had 60 acres. And then we had to get police officers to monitor because people were crashing the party. And it just became the greatest thing ever. But here's the post-note to this one, maybe for. So my wife says to me one night, how many people did you actually know? After this 1,250 or so. And I'm like, maybe 12. Maybe 12. So she goes, that's it, we're done. So we stopped. Well, about 2 years later, the Juvenile Diabetes Association wanted to have a party and raise money. My family's been racked by diabetes, so I thought, okay, we'll bring it back. So I did a big takeoff on the Michael Jackson tour, saying something like, this is really the last time, or something like that. And I did a poster with me posing with the silver glove on and the whole bit. And I said, you know, this is really the last time. Well, 2 years after that, a friend of mine gets ALS. And the family wanted to have another fundraiser. And I said, well, this is getting embarrassing. I mean, I had a big retirement on the 25th party. Then 2 years later, I announced that I'm coming out of retirement to have another party. I said, I think this is kind of awkward. I can't really do it. And then the light bulb went off, and I got Brett Favre. And Brett Favre at that time was, you know, going from the Green Bay Packers, then retires, then he goes to the Jets, and then he retires, and then he goes to the Vikings. And I got Brett Favre, and I'm sitting by my backyard pool, and I'm sitting there, and I'm doing just like this, Jamie. Boy, I'd like to have another party to benefit ALS, but I've retired twice, and I can't possibly come out of retirement for another party. And then I had Brett Favre pop up in the bubble over my head, and he goes, hey, Hanson, just because you're retired doesn't mean you can't keep coming back. And I looked up, I went, hey, Brett, you're right. Thanks, man. Hey, party's on. And we raised about $190,000 for
Wow.
ALS, and we do the party again. But then we shut it down. My wife said, okay, that's it. That's it. If anybody gets sick again, they're on their own. We're not doing it ever again. But it was the most amazing party. And I swear to you, we haven't had the party in probably I forget exactly what year it was, but it's been at least 12, 14 years since our last party. And there's very seldom a day goes by that I don't run into somebody and they go, you know, I was at your party in Waxahachie. I was at your party in Keller. It was unbelievable. I went, yeah, well, you can thank Mert Levine for that because she inspired me to throw a party. And I just want to say, if Mert happens to hear this, thank you, Mert. It cost me a fortune. It cost me an absolute fortune. I wish I had never met you.
Well, she's still living in Des Moines, and so I'll see if I can get a hold of her so she could hear this podcast.
But it was great. It was great. And then, like I said, I think she did a heck of a nice job as mayor, but I'll never forget that line. I will never forget it.
That's great.
I think the little lady should get back in the kitchen where all the little ladies belong. And I'm looking at him, and at that time, if Newton wasn't the biggest city in Iowa to elect a mayor, it was really close. I mean, people find that hard to believe nowadays, of course. I mean, you know, you've got a senator in Iowa, for goodness sakes, who's a woman, and I would have been a senator in Iowa because I too castrated pigs. I just didn't realize that was a qualification to be a senator.
That's right.
But, you know, it was a different time back then. I mean, it really was a different time, and Mert Levine pulled off a pretty big upset. And she broke that old boys club in Newton, and I think that was a very good thing. I think it was an absolutely good thing that she did.
Well, and I don't know if you knew this or not, Newton now has its second female mayor, Evelyn George. She's not going to be running again, but she's, I think, done a pretty good job as mayor, so it's been nice having her as mayor, too. Hey, before we wrap up, I guess another memory of Newton, you were heavily involved with the Newton Nighthawks doing play-by-play. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your memories of the Nighthawks, Dale.
Well, that was great. Actually, I think the main connection there was Stan Alspaugh, who at the time was the Baxter football coach. And Stan Alspaugh and I were great running buddies. I remember doing all those coaches shows. Well, then they come to me and, hey, we're going to have the Newton Nighthawks. Well, I go to this booster club meeting, and this was kind of crazy. Of course, I wouldn't do it today, Jamie. My ethics are a little bit better now than they were back then. But I became the president of the Nighthawks Booster Club. And because I told him, I said, listen, I want to help you. I think it's great. But I said, I'm not going to be like your public relations director or your communicator. I'm not going to be the press guy, which is usually the typical job that whenever somebody in the media gets involved in some charity group or some community event, they almost always say, hey, I got a job for you. You can be our press officer. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And they said, well, how about being president of the club? And I'm like, well, that's probably not what I should be doing, but I'm happy to do it. Well, then I became, in the beginning, I was the PA announcer at the games. And I just had a riot. I mean, I was making fun of the other team. I was, cheering from the press box. It was just a blast. Then we started carrying the games on the radio. And the one best story, they win the championship in Chicago. We drive to Chicago. They've got us, Jamie, sitting, we're not in a press box at the stadium. We're across the street in a basketball gymnasium, opening up a window probably 100 yards minimum from the football field.
Yeah.
We could hardly see the football field. And it was Tom Ross, he was a coach at one time with the Nighthawks, and he's my color guy. And we're sitting inside this basketball gymnasium broadcasting the football game that was happening about 2 blocks down. And Jerry Moses, they're behind, they kicked the ball to Jerry Moses, and luckily I got a little bit better as the years went by, and Jerry Moses is taking this punt back, and all I'm saying is, he may go! He may go! He may go! They finally tackle him at about the 15-yard line. They throw a touchdown pass to Bob Buell, who now lives in Texas. He caught the winning pass. They win the game. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'll never get. I get back to Newton, Iowa, and everybody called me at the radio station and said, Dale, we really enjoy your enthusiasm. We really enjoy your support of the Nighthawks. But if you're going to do the play-by-play, you might want to say something a little bit more than, he may go! He may go! And next thing I know, I end up doing the Cowboys games on the radio for 13 years with Brad Cham, and I was the analyst. And Brad handled the play-by-play, and on more than one occasion, I would be in the background. And I swear to you, just as an ode to my great times, in the background, you could hear me going, "He may go! He may go!" As Brad is doing, he's at the 40, he's at the 45, he crosses midfield, he's down. And I'm just having a blast, and I swear to you, and the first time I did it, Brad kind of looked at me and goes, "What was that?" I said, "Never mind. You really wouldn't appreciate it."
You must have had a smile on your face thinking back to your Nighthawks days.
I tell you the truth, I did a lot of things, and I think it worked for the most part. I did a lot of things to amuse myself.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
And a lot of it traces back. A lot of it traces back to KCOB Newton. It really does. I did have a very good time in Knoxville, Iowa, and I really thought I made a huge mistake because I didn't really enjoy Knoxville, Iowa. I wasn't very good in Knoxville, Iowa. I hated St. Cloud, Minnesota, and I was horrible in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I wasn't at Coyle long enough to have any real appreciation for it. But then again, here comes that angel. And I walk in the door at KMTV, the NBC affiliate in Omaha, and I'm applying for a news job. And the guy says to me, "Where'd you go to school?" I said, "Logan, Iowa." He said, "No, I mean, where'd you go to college? You have to have a college degree to work here." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, I never went to college." He said, "Well, you can't work here. I mean, you have to have a college degree." Dave Weber, much like Dave Reek, Dave Weber unexpectedly quits, the weekend sportscaster. And Mark Gatier looks at me, and I'll leave you with this thought. Mark Gatier looks at me and says, as he slams the phone down, "How would you like to be the weekend sportscaster?" And I looked at Mark and I said, "Well, I would love to." He said, "Do you like sports?" I said, "Oh, I love sports. I love sports." He then said, I said, "Well, I thought everybody who worked here had to have a college degree." And he goes, "Not to be a sportscaster. You don't need any education at all for that job." I auditioned, and they hired me, and now you know the rest of the story.
Well, and I don't know if you even remember, but you had started as a weekend sports anchor, and I came to visit you when you started doing that, or not long after you started that, and they were trying to introduce you to the public. And Sanguinary, who did the Saturday night, he did the Saturday night scary movie show, and you were acting like as a bank robber or something like that in a skit. And I came to watch that. I was there, 2 days or something, kind of hanging out with you in Omaha, and I had a friend with me and whatnot, and you introduced me to Sanguinary because I would come to visit my grandma and my aunt in Missouri Valley, and me and my sister would watch Sanguinary, and I thought, Dale Hansen's in a skit with Sanguinary. How cool is that? And you introduced me to some of those Channel 3 people there. At the time, it was downtown. I know it moved out to the other side of Omaha at one time. But anyway, you moved on from there, and your career just really blew up when you went to Dallas, and it became huge.
I was very fortunate to be in the right spot at the right time, and just know this, because I could talk with you for hours. As my wife always says to me when I told her I was doing this interview with you, and she goes, "Oh, great, well, at least it is your favorite topic, talking about me." But I said, Jamie, I've got to run, and I know you got other things to do as well, but I tell you, you are an incredibly big part of my life, and I've told you this before, and I'll say it publicly again. The relationship that you and I fostered in the beginning and continued over the years, in all seriousness, was a great inspiration to me that I absolutely believe played a huge part in whatever success I had along the way. I've never forgotten what you and John Carl and KCOB and Newton, Iowa meant to me then And here we are some 50 plus years later, and what you and John Carl and KCOB means to me now. So,
Well,
Jamie, I'm glad that you remembered this old guy and got me on your podcast. I wish you the very best, my friend. I wish you the very best.
thank you, my friend, and I will never forget all the kind things you've done for me and how you got me started in this crazy business. And we'll talk again. Let's do another podcast in another few months and get caught up. Thank you very much, Dale. I appreciate it.
All right, Jamie. Stay in touch. See you, buddy.
Yeah.
This podcast has been sponsored by Jersey Freeze, home of the Van and Bon Bon Freezer, Lynette Baker, Halo Branded Solutions, Westside Java Coffee Bar, and Made Right in Newton, serving breakfast 7 days a week. Until next time, grrr, out is out. See ya.